My husband and I are a blended family, married for 3 years. I brought my son, and he brought his daughter. This time, I was sent on a business trip to a neighboring city by my company. The night before I left, my 7-year-old son Leo hugged my legs and whispered, "Mom, I'm a little scared. Please come back soon." I smiled and reassured him, but 3 days later when I returned home, there was no son rushing over for a hug. Where's my son? Where did Leo go? I searched the entire house but couldn't find my son. What's all the commotion? Your precious son pushed my daughter down the stairs. That vicious little bastard, I'm sending him to the orphanage to reflect on his actions. This family has enough with just my daughter. His daughter Annie sat on the sofa, flashing me a smug, triumphant smile. I understood then, this was a carefully orchestrated expulsion. I didn't argue with the father and daughter, I immediately drove to the orphanage. 3 days, just 3 days. My world transformed from a sunlit, warm living room into the gloom of an orphanage. My son Leo's childish cries echo relentlessly in my mind. "Mommy, I'm scared." He was calling out to me for help. Yet I mistook it for whining and ignored his final plea. Every bump in the road serves as a reminder of my foolishness. Every thudding beat of my heart urges me to go faster. On the dashboard sits a family photo of 4. In the photo, Liam wore gold-rimmed glasses and smiled gently at me. He said he would treat Leo as his own son. "Olivia, you and Leo, along with Annie, will be my whole life from now on." I slammed my fist into the photo. The frame bounced off the glass and ricocheted onto the back seat, that phony face vanished. Finally, I arrived at the orphanage. I stormed inside. A middle-aged woman with a blank expression blocked my path, identifying herself as the director. "Ma'am, you can't just wander in here." She eyed me warily, taking in my disheveled appearance. "Where's my child?" "There are no children of yours here. All the children here are orphans." My gaze swept past her, searching the courtyard. Then, I saw a figure curled up in the corner. He wore a dusty, obviously ill-fitting old coat. Huddled into a ball, he seemed determined to go unnoticed. That wasn't my Leo. My Leo had full cheeks, bright eyes, and always wore clean clothes. Yet that was my Leo. I walked over step by step. Hearing my footsteps, his body flinched and he buried his head deeper. I crouched down, reached out my hand, my voice trembling uncontrollably. "Leo?" He froze. After several seconds, he slowly lifted his head, revealing a small face streaked with tears and dust. Seeing me, a flicker of light finally appeared in those hollow eyes. Then, her mouth fell open, and a heart-wrenching cry erupted. "Mommy, where did you go?" I was so scared. I held him tightly in my arms. Tears soaked my shoulders as he stammered in a child's voice laced with terror. "Mommy, it was my sister. It was Annie, she rolled down the stairs herself. She said if I dare tell anyone, Dad won't want me anymore." "Mommy. Dad really doesn't want me anymore." I held him close, my body shaking uncontrollably as I asked the director, "Who brought him here?" The dean said nothing, merely handing me a form. In the guardian section, Liam's name stood out prominently. I stared at those 2 characters as if they were an enemy. Further down, the donation amount section. 50,000 yuan. This sum of money bought my son's freedom, and bought my last illusion of family. Holding Leo, I stood up. "What else did Liam say?" She pulled an envelope from the drawer. "This is from Liam. He said you'd understand once you read it." I took the envelope with one hand and tore it open. "Olivia, if you choose your son, we'll divorce." I laughed. I tore the letter into pieces with force. Holding Leo, I turned and walked away. The principal called after me, "Hey, this child's paperwork isn't finished yet." I turned back and looked at her. "Try stopping me if you dare." My gaze made the rest of her words stick in her throat. I left the orphanage with my son in my arms. "Liam, Annie. I won't let you off easy. I absolutely won't." I took Leo's hand and stepped into the so-called home. Liam sat on the sofa, spoon-feeding Annie some steamed applesauce. A bandage wrapped around Annie's ankle as she nestled against Liam, taking tiny bites. Grandma sat beside her, stroking Annie's hair. She murmured softly, "Sweetheart, you must be scared. That little bastard shouldn't have been accepted. He's a born disaster." Leo's small hand trembled in mine as he shrank completely behind me. Annie spotted us. She immediately buried her face in Liam's embrace, her body huddled up, speaking in a trembling, tearful voice. "Daddy, Big Brother's home." Liam didn't look up, just held Annie close and gently patted her back. In that moment, the three of them in the living room formed a complete and heartwarming picture. Leo and I became intruders, two unwanted, unwelcome presences. I led Leo by the hand to the coffee table. He slammed the hospital diagnosis report, that thin sheet of paper bearing the words acute malnutrition, multiple soft tissue contusions, severe traumatic stress reaction, onto the coffee table. The table emitted a sharp crack. Grandma's hand stopped stroking Annie's, and Liam paused mid-feed of fruit. Liam glanced at the report and immediately furrowed his brow. "What's the big deal now? Boys are just being boys. Isn't it normal for them to bump into things?" He pointed to the barely noticeable bandage around Annie's ankle. "Look at Annie." He pushed her down the stairs, and she still has nightmares to this day. "How old is she? And you let your son bully her like this? Olivia, what kind of heart do you have?" The mother-in-law erupted like a lit firecracker. "You have the nerve to bring her back. You raised that little monster who hurt our Annie, and now you dare bring him back. Let me tell you, Olivia, our family won't have this rotten seed. Get him out of here right now." Tears welled up uncontrollably in my eyes and slid down my cheeks. I raised my hand to wipe them away. "I need to see the hallway surveillance footage." Liam's expression grew even more impatient. "Give it a rest." The property manager said that camera's been broken for ages. He held Annie close and sank back into the sofa. "Olivia, stop being unreasonable. Is it so hard to admit your son is a born troublemaker?" The property manager's gaze remained fixed on the computer screen before him. "Olivia, the surveillance lines are outdated and have indeed malfunctioned. We've already filed a repair request." His tone was thoroughly professional, devoid of any personal warmth. I stepped out of the property management office and bumped into Aunt Wong, who lives downstairs. The smile vanished instantly from her face when she saw me. Her eyes darted away as she hurried past with her head down. Undeterred, I knocked on the door next door. A young woman answered. "I don't know anything, don't ask me." The door slammed shut in my face. I heard my mother-in-law's voice coming from the stairwell. She was ranting at several neighbors, spittle flying, "That woman is so cruel. She doesn't discipline her own son properly, just bullying a motherless child, and now she's trying to turn the tables on us." When Liam called, I was dressing Leo's wound. "Olivia, I'm giving you two options. 1. Send Leo back to the country with your mother. Pretend this never happened, and we can still make it work. 2. Divorce. You'll leave with nothing but that little bastard. Not a single penny of the house, car, or savings under my name will go to you." I hung up immediately. Taking Leo with me, I headed to the hallway to continue checking for clues. Just then, a faint click came from across the hall, the sound of a door closing. An image flashed through my mind, Lucas, the guy next door with his obsessive cleanliness and privacy issues. I remember he once installed a German-made smart peephole on the door, complete with wide-angle recording and cloud storage. I took Leo's hand and walked up to the tightly shut door. Raising my hand, I knocked. The door opened, and Lucas looked at me warily. "What is it?" I took half a step back, fully exposing Leo behind me to his view. I rolled up the sleeve of Leo's right arm. The crisscrossing bruises and wounds were startlingly vivid under the harsh, white light of the hallway. Fear filled Leo's eyes as he instinctively tried to hide behind me. Lucas's impatience froze on his face. He looked at Leo's wounds, then at the child's frightened eyes, and finally his gaze settled on mine. He exhaled a long breath. "Come in." He stepped aside, making room for us to pass. I placed the video hard drive I found at Lucas's place on the living room coffee table. Liam and his mother sat on the sofa, arms crossed over their chests, their lips curled in a mocking smile. His mother spoke first. "What new trick are you up to now? Olivia, haven't you caused enough trouble?" Liam pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes behind the lenses brimming with impatience. "Olivia, stop messing around. It's not doing anyone any favors." I ignored them, plugging in the power cord and connecting the computer. The projector's light hit the white cloth directly opposite, forming a bright rectangle. I pressed play. The image began to shake. It was the surveillance view of my building's stairwell. At first, the hallway was deserted. The grandmother snorted derisively, playing ghosts and goblins. Seconds later, Annie appeared on screen. Wearing that white puffy skirt, she peered cautiously up and down the stairs. After confirming no one was nearby, she turned to face the surveillance camera. A smile appeared on her face, one entirely out of place for someone her age, tinged with a hint of eeriness and calculation. Her lips moved slightly as she practiced the expression she would soon force herself to cry. Then, she adjusted her body angle, carefully shielding her face and head, and with an extremely professional posture, let herself tumble down the stairs. The entire process was smooth and practiced. Annie's fake cries of "ouch, ouch," rang out jarringly in the living room's silence. Liam's mouth hung open, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down, yet not a single word escaped him. The curse his mother-in-law was about to spit out caught in her throat. Her mouth hung open, emitting a hollow huh sound as her eyes fixed intently on the scene unfolding on the wall. Annie, seated on the sofa, began to tremble. Her face, usually innocent and carefree, was now etched with terror. Her hidden secret was now broadcast for all to see. The video continued, showing her lying on the ground, contorting herself into the most pitiable pose, waiting to be discovered. I pressed pause, freezing the image on her pitifully vulnerable face. A dull thud shattered the silence. Liam dropped to his knees, kneeling straight before me. He scrambled over on all fours and grabbed my calf. "Olivia, I was wrong. I really didn't know. I really didn't know it was like this." His voice was filled with pleading. "Annie, she's just a child. She doesn't understand. Please forgive her, forgive us this once. We're the family. Calling the police will ruin her. Her whole life will be ruined." "Family?" I lifted my foot and forcefully shook his hand off. Ignoring his wails, I pulled another file folder from my bag. I raised my hand and flung the paper bag straight into his face. "For your spoiled little daughter, you sacrificed my son's entire life? Now, open your dog eyes and take a good look at what you've been protecting." Documents spilled out of the file folder, several sheets of A4 paper fluttering lightly to the floor before him. Liam's gaze fell on the bolded title at the top of the papers, the words crystal clear, DNA kinship test report. He went straight to the conclusion section. "Liam is not Annie's biological father." "Fake," he snarled. "You absolutely forged this. Olivia, you poisonous bitch." He tore at the papers in a frenzy. I didn't say a word, just watched him. He paced the living room like a caged beast, his gold-rimmed glasses askew on his nose, breathing heavily. He stopped, panting, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me, as if searching my face for even the slightest hint of guilt. I wore no expression. I simply pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and tapped the screen lightly. A recording played out clearly. A woman's voice flowed out, flirtatious yet dripping with contempt. It was his ex-wife, Ava. "Liam? He's just the fall guy I picked up when I ditched that old man. Give him some cash to raise a kid and shut people up, he'll be thrilled. He knows full well he's not climbing into our family, right?" The woman's voice on the phone kept talking, but Liam couldn't hear a word. It wasn't that he didn't know, he'd known all along. All his kindness toward Annie, all his harshness toward me and Leo, stemmed from a deal he understood perfectly well. He wasn't a victim of deception, he was the most active accomplice in this dirty deal. Liam lifted his head, and the eyes usually hidden behind glasses, those eyes that usually looked refined and scholarly, were now bloodshot and filled with terror. All the pretense, all the scheming, in this single moment, shattered by these few brief words. The mother-in-law, who had been standing by, ready to jump in at any moment, felt her face twitch uncontrollably. The bloodline she boasted about, the golden treasure she constantly flaunted, the greatest weapon she wielded to belittle my son, it turned out to be nothing more than a bastard. And the son she cherished like a precious jewel? Just a good-for-nothing who, for money, willingly raised another man's daughter. Ugh! A strange sound escaped her throat as she clutched her chest, her sharp features flushing a deep, liver-like red. Then her eyes rolled back, and her body fell straight backward. With a dull thud, the back of her head slammed against the smooth floor tiles, and she fell silent. Mom! Liam finally snapped out of his shock, scrambling over on all fours. Chaos erupted in the living room. Annie's shrill cries pierced the air as she stared at her grandmother lying on the floor, then glanced at her father slumped on the ground. Her delicate little face was etched with utter bewilderment. Liam shook his unconscious mother, then glanced back at Annie. That glance held no trace of feigned paternal affection. What churned in his eyes was a torrent of hatred, the utter revulsion of a man whose sordid dealings had been exposed. He looked at Annie as though she were a piece of trash. Annie shuddered under his gaze, her sobs catching in her throat. The fire she had lit with her own hands had finally turned to consume her. I ignored the chaos unfolding before me. I didn't go to check on my grandmother who'd collapsed from a stroke, nor did I look at the man who'd finally revealed his true colors. Right in front of Liam, I pressed 3 numbers on my phone. Hello, is this the police? I need to file a report. Liam froze, his movements halting. He looked up at me in disbelief. My husband, Liam, is accused of long-term abuse and abandonment of my 7-year-old son. This is the address, Sunshine Community, Building C, Unit 2303. The color drained completely from his face. He knew it was all over. When the police burst through the door, this was the scene they witnessed. An old woman lay foaming at the mouth on the ground, a man knelt beside her in a daze, and a little girl stood frozen in place. And I, standing calmly in the midst of this chaos, pointed at Liam. He abused my son. I produced Leo's medical report, presented evidence of his abandonment at the orphanage, and showed photographs of the overlapping old and new scars on his body. When Liam was led away in handcuffs, he offered no resistance. He just stared at me intently, his eyes a mix of hatred, fear, and a hint of pleading. After Liam was detained, the divorce proceedings proceeded without a hitch. I secured the lion's share of the assets, plus a staggering sum in emotional distress damages. All his accounts were frozen, and the luxury cars and mansions bought with my money were all put into liquidation. He lost his job, and the successful man facade he relied on for survival was torn off by my own hands and thrown to the ground. The day he was released from detention, I was signing the final documents at the law office. He burst in, his white shirt yellowed and wrinkled, greasy hair plastered to his scalp, bloodshot eyes peering out from behind gold-rimmed glasses. He was no longer the refined, scholarly Liam. He was now a loser who'd crawled out of the gutter. Olivia. His voice was hoarse, cracking with effort. I didn't even look up. Please escort him out. Security held his arms, and he struggled wildly, snarling at me. You ruined me. You poisonous bitch. I won't let you off the hook. Neither you nor that little bastard will ever have it easy. I finally looked up at him. My gaze fell upon his wrist, the expensive watch I'd given him was gone. He must have pawned it for the last pitiful bit of money. I stood up and walked toward him, but the security guard nervously blocked his path. I straightened my collar. Liam, you're wrong. It wasn't me who ruined you, it was you. Seeing the venom in his eyes, I added, "Oh, and your precious daughter, Annie." I moved into a new home with Leo. A small self-facing apartment where sunlight streams in from morning until evening. I discarded everything from my past, bringing only Leo's drawing board and toys. I hired the city's best psychologist for him. The doctor said companionship is the best medicine. So I turned down all non-essential work, spending each day drawing with him, telling him stories, and taking him to the little park downstairs to soak up the sun. At first, he remained silent, his paper covered in vast swathes of black and red. He would have nightmares, waking with a scream, drenched in cold sweat. Whenever this happened, I would hold him tightly in my arms, repeating the same words over and over. "Leo, don't be afraid. Mommy's here. Mommy's right here. No one can hurt you." He would cling tightly to my clothes, his body slowly ceasing to tremble in my arms before drifting into a deep sleep. A month later, a hint of blue appeared in his paintings, the sky. 2 months later, he drew a small yellow circle, the sun. The smile on his face grew more frequent, though still faint, no longer tinged with the terror of before. I thought life was finally getting back on track, that all the darkness and decay were being gradually washed away by the sunlight. It was through a phone call from an old neighbor that I heard the news about Liam and Annie. Liam took Annie back and moved back into that rundown house he couldn't even afford to pay off. Unable to find work, he spent his days selling off whatever was left in the house and drowning his sorrows in alcohol. He took out all his frustration on Annie. The woman he once held in the palm of his hand, using her as a tool to secure money and advancement, has now become the scapegoat for his failed life. He no longer calls her "my little princess," but instead money-losing piece of junk and unlucky star. Neighbors say they can hear a child's cries, a man's curses, and the sound of things being smashed coming from that house almost every day. As for the once vicious and mean mother-in-law, after learning her son had been sentenced to divorce and lost all his property, she suffered a complete stroke and is now bedridden. She couldn't even speak clearly, just lying there every day, her eyes filled with venom as she stared fixedly at Annie moving around the room. After hearing this, I hung up the phone, feeling not a single ripple of emotion. I didn't care whether they lived or died, they got what they deserved. Until that night, when I was organizing files on my old phone and accidentally tapped on that video again. In the video, Annie stood in an empty corner, revealing that chilling expression, one that didn't belong to a child. Those eyes. Those eyes held no fear, only searing hatred and calculation. I have no doubt that in that home filled with violence and resentment, the seed of hatred is sprouting and growing at an alarming rate. It waits for an opportunity to break through the soil, an opportunity to exact revenge on all who ruined her life. And I am first on the list. A red Porsche pulled up in front of me, its screeching brakes shattering the morning's tranquility. The door swung open, and high heels clicked sharply on the pavement. I recognized the woman stepping out, Liam's ex-wife, Ava. She opened the door, her gaze landing on me. Her gaze held no warmth, only scrutiny. She pulled out a document. Liam violated the agreement. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. You ruined his reputation outright. Well done. She paused, a faint curve lifting the corners of her mouth, filled with icy scorn. But it's not enough. I looked at her, this woman I'd only ever seen in photographs. She showed not a shred of concern for Annie, the daughter she had abandoned. Mentioning her felt like discussing an object of no personal significance. The coldness in her eyes marked the final step in the asset liquidation process. Liam was the last bad debt she needed to clear away. Ava's legal team is top tier. They move with astonishing speed and terrifying efficiency. The grounds for the lawsuit are blunt and straightforward: failure to comply with the confidential support agreement and commercial fraud. Ava not only intends to recover all child support payments made over the years but also demands full repayment with interest. Every shady deal Liam ever pulled using the resources and connections she provided has been thoroughly exposed. The connections and tactics he once prided himself on now served as the nails driving his own coffin shut. Court summonses and asset freeze orders arrived at Liam's doorstep almost simultaneously. I saw the follow-up on the news. His last property was seized and auctioned off, and all his bank accounts were frozen and liquidated. Overnight, he went from being a man of some standing to a debt-ridden vagrant. Ava achieved her goal, using the most professional methods to erase him completely from society. I felt no unnecessary joy, only a peculiar calm. It turns out that true destruction is silent. Liam has lost his mind. When a man loses everything, even his dignity trampled into the mud, he ceases to be human. He began appearing in my life. When I dropped Leo off at art class, I'd see him at the street corner. He wore a filthy shirt, his hair greasy, his eyes fixed on me with venom. He was no longer the refined man in gold-rimmed glasses. He was merely a demon crawling out of hell, and he was convinced I had pushed him down there. My phone started receiving silent calls with no caller ID. When I answered, all I heard was heavy, labored breathing, followed by vicious, stifled curses. "Olivia, may you rot in hell. I'll make sure you and your son go down with you." I drew all the curtains and changed my phone number. But fear seeped in everywhere. One morning, I was about to drive Leo to the beach. My car was covered in red paint, scrawled with words. "Bitch. Die." Leo cowered behind me, his tiny body trembling. I held him tightly in my arms. I knew that someone with nothing to lose was capable of anything. Midnight. The light in Leo's room had been off for ages, and the entire house was shrouded in silence. Just as I closed my eyes, a faint click sounded from the door lock. My whole body jolted, and I sat up instantly. It wasn't my imagination. I leaped out of bed barefoot, leaving the lights off. Holding my breath, I inched toward the door, my heart pounding violently in my chest. Bang! The door was smashed open from the outside with tremendous force. A figure staggered inside, reeking of alcohol. It was Liam. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, and his gold-rimmed glasses hung askew on his face. Beneath the lenses, his madness was unmasked. "Olivia," he roared, his voice hoarse and twisted. "You ruined me. You ruined everything I had." He didn't look at me, his gaze passing right through me and fixing on Leo's tightly shut door. "I'll make you taste the pain of losing everything," he growled, lunging toward Leo's room like a madman. My mind went blank, but my body reacted first. I screamed and lunged forward, wrapping my arms around him with all my strength and pushing him back. "Liam! Are you out of your mind?" He wouldn't listen at all, struggling violently with astonishing brute strength. In the chaos, he pulled something from his pocket, a cold gleam flashing in the dim light. It was a fruit knife. He swung it wildly. I felt only a sudden chill on my arm, followed by searing pain. I looked down to see a gash split open on my forearm. Warm blood immediately gushed out, staining my pajama sleeve crimson. "Ah!" Leo's door swung open. Startled awake, he stood in the doorway, letting out a terrified scream. That shriek made Liam freeze for a second. It also ignited the destructive urge in his eyes. He flung me away, sending me crashing into the wall before I slid to the floor. He left me there, striding over to grab Leo's slender arm. I held Leo, who was trembling so violently he couldn't make a sound, while staring at my own bleeding arm. Sirens grew louder as they approached, finally stopping downstairs. A neighbor had called the police. When the police burst in, Liam was clutching Leo tightly, knife pointed at us, cursing incessantly. Several officers tackled him to the ground, and the knife clattered to the floor. Until the moment they cuffed him, he was still yelling obscenities, threatening to kill us and wishing us a miserable death. I couldn't hear a thing. I rushed over and pulled Leo into a tight embrace. He didn't cry, just stared wide-eyed, his whole body shaking uncontrollably. I held him close, feeling every part of him tremble. My arm was still bleeding, drops falling onto the floor and staining Leo's clothes. I stared at the bloodstain, then looked at my son trembling in my arms, and then at Liam, still snarling as he was dragged away by the police. I realize that as long as Liam remains alive in this world, Leo and I will never know peace. I must ensure he never rises again. Suing Liam was too slow. The punishment meted out by the law was too lenient. The private investigator worked efficiently, uncovering far more evidence than I had anticipated. I examined each document one by one. Annie's DNA report was there in black and white, clear as day. On the report's conclusion page, Mason's name appeared alongside Annie's. Mason, a name I'd only encountered in financial news. President of a publicly traded company, a rising star, currently running for president of the Industry Association. He was about to marry the daughter of another tycoon, a powerful alliance promising boundless prospects. The dossier contained several official photos of him, a polished smile, sharp eyes, a respectable man. And respectable men fear nothing more than losing their respectability. I flipped through the report to find a stack of photographs underneath. They showed Mason in his youth, locked in an embrace with a woman whose eyes and brows held a captivating charm. That woman was Annie's mother, Ava. The backdrop was a dimly lit bar, its atmosphere tinged with suggestive intimacy. Below that was a USB drive. I plugged it into my computer and opened the files inside. The first one was a video. Annie stood alone in an empty living room, slashing her arm with a small knife before turning to the camera and flashing an eerie smile. The second recording was Liam bragging to his friends while drunk. Just a dead weight. Mason gives me $200,000 a month to keep me quiet. Once he marries that tycoon's daughter and secures his position, he'll give me even more. That stupid woman Olivia, she really thinks I care about this kid. I listened expressionlessly, making a copy of every single document. The last one was Ava's transfer records to Liam, every transaction crystal clear. Taken individually, these things are troublesome. Put together, they're dynamite. I haven't contacted Mason. Extortion is also a crime, and I won't give him any chance to turn the tables on me. My goal has never been money. What I want is the destruction of every single one of them. I went to the most upscale gift shop and selected a deep blue square gift box lined with golden silk. I also chose a roll of silver satin ribbon. Back home, I slipped on white gloves and neatly stacked all the photocopied evidence, one by one. Annie's DNA report sat on top. I printed out that video screenshot of her eerie smile in color and placed it beside the report. Liam's recording, I transferred onto an elegant silver USB drive and placed it gently in the center. Ava's bank transfer records and Mason's intimate old photos with her lay on either side. Everything was arranged like a work of art. I closed the box lid and tied a perfect bow with silver satin ribbon by hand. No greeting card, no signature. This gift itself was a declaration. I drove to the shipping center and filled in the recipient's address. I didn't send it to Mason, nor did I send it to his company. I sent it to his fiancé's father, the patriarch of a family renowned for its strict traditions and unwavering emphasis on reputation. This congratulatory gift will arrive punctually the day before Mason and his fiancé's engagement party. I didn't have to wait long. The news of the engagement party's cancellation was the first to surface. Without any official explanation, the vague statement "postponed for reasons" became the biggest joke in the community. The next day, the results of Mason's election for president of the Industry Association were announced. He suffered a crushing defeat by a landslide margin. Immediately afterward, the stock market opened. News of the founder's major ethical scandal spread like wildfire, sending the company's stock price plummeting to its daily limit. Over 3 consecutive days, its market value evaporated by tens of billions. When the wall falls, everyone pushes. Media outlets began digging frantically, digging up old stories from years past, embellishing them with sensational details, and spreading them across the entire internet. I sat at my computer, staring at Mason's haggard, furious face on the screen. He wanted to protect himself, but more than that, he wanted revenge. Unable to track down this anonymous gift giver, he unleashed all his fury upon the only target he could pin down, the former glove who had exposed his secret. Enraged, Mason mobilized every ounce of his power and connections. A week later, Liam was sent to prison. The charges were malicious extortion and commercial fraud. The evidence was overwhelming, both witness testimony and physical proof, irrefutable and indisputable. On the day of the trial, I saw him on the news, escorted out by bailiffs in handcuffs, his hair disheveled, his eyes vacant. He screamed at the camera, cursing Mason, cursing me. No one paid attention to the wails of a loser. In the end, he was sentenced to a heavy punishment, with multiple crimes combined. Mason personally sent the gravedigger who had kept his secret straight to hell, condemning him to eternal darkness. He preserved his last shred of dignity, yet lost everything he once possessed. In this game, there were no winners. I turned off the news and drew the curtains. The television news kept replaying that scene. Liam, clad in prison garb, was dragged out of the courtroom by two bailiffs who had him by the arms. His greasy hair clung to his forehead, his once refined features contorted, bloodshot eyes fixed on the camera. He screamed. "Mason! You'll rot in hell," he cursed. "Olivia! I'll haunt you even as a ghost." The surrounding reporters clicked away relentlessly, yet not one spared him a second glance. A failure whose worth had been completely drained, his wails were nothing but noise. The judge's voice rang out, clear and cold. Malicious extortion, commercial fraud, multiple offenses to be punished concurrently. Sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. The gavel fell, sealing his fate. His life was utterly ruined, rotting away in a dungeon never seeing the light of day. A week later, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was a former neighbor from my old neighborhood, speaking hesitantly and stammering. "Olivia, your ex-mother-in-law, she had a stroke, a severe one. She's bedridden now and can't even speak." The voice on the other end kept talking, but I'd already hung up. I blocked that number and deleted every contact linked to that family. She once pointed her finger at me and called my son a bastard. Now her only son is behind bars, and she herself is caught between life and death. Whose retribution is this? I couldn't care less. The truth about Annie's fate, spilled by a longtime family friend of the Joes after drinking, quickly spread throughout their social circle. That child, once as delicate as a porcelain doll, became an indelible stain on Mason's life. With his company teetering on the brink of collapse, Mason was too preoccupied with his own survival to spare any energy for the illegitimate daughter who had ruined his reputation. He used money to send Annie to a strictly military-style boarding school overseas. That school was notorious for its harshness and ruthlessness. Children who entered its gates emerged with every sharp edge worn away, transformed into compliant tools. She personally dragged everyone into the abyss. In the end, she herself became the first piece of trash to be discarded. I shut down the computer. The city's grudges and grievances, at last, were settled. I sold the apartment in town that bore my name. I cleared out everything, taking only Leo and a few boxes of simple belongings. We boarded a train bound for the south. The scenery outside the window receded steadily. The city that had held me captive for a decade finally shrank into a tiny speck and vanished from sight. We stopped in a seaside town so remote it's hard to find on any map. Here, the sky is blue, the clouds are white, and the wind carries the scent of salt. With the money from selling my house, I bought a new apartment. Each morning, sunlight streams unobstructed throughout the entire house, filling the air with the fragrance of flowers, plants, and earth. Leo now had his own little easel, placed right by the window. He no longer shut himself in his room, instead, he sat there every day, quietly painting. He painted the blue sea, white sailboats, and tourists chasing each other and playing on the sandy beach. One afternoon, after trimming a bunch of sunflowers, I turned to look at him. He held up his drawing to show me. On the paper, a huge, warm sun hung in the sky, beneath which stretched a brilliant rainbow of 7 colors. It was the first time a sun had appeared in his paintings. I set down the scissors and walked over to him. He lifted his face and gave me a smile. Gone from that smile were the fear and unease of the past, it was a genuinely relaxed and pure expression of joy. My eyes grew warm. I reached out and gently stroked his head. In the evening, I took Leo for a walk along the beach. The sea breeze ruffled my short hair, carrying a fresh, liberating scent. The afterglow of the setting sun bathed the sand in a warm golden hue. Leo took off his shoes and left tiny footprints in the soft sand. He ran for a while, then came back to me and held my hand tightly. He tilted his head back, his eyes clear and bright in the twilight. "Mom, will we live here from now on?" His voice was soft, tinged with cautious confirmation. I crouched down so he could meet my eyes. I nodded, my voice firm yet gentle. "Yes. We'll live here from now on." I looked at him. "With Mom here, there's nothing to fear." In that moment, I wasn't Liam's wife, nor the daughter-in-law of that harsh woman. I'm just Olivia. Leo's mom. An ordinary woman who crawled out of the darkness and reclaimed her life through sheer determination. From today onward, our lives will grow toward the sun.